Hey everyone, how's it going today? And welcome back to another update. So today's update is going to be interesting because I really want to give a brand new update to talk a little bit about what's been going on in the world of the Russian-Ukraine war, but also to maybe now talk a little bit back again about stimulus checks. But probably even more important than that is really about how everything that is going on right now with the war, basically around the world and everything that's happening, is going to potentially impact not even just stimulus checks at this point, but even simply put just stimulus programs, and then maybe also talk a little bit about the inflation situation, but even more so about the actual significance to everything and about why all of this really matters to us. So hopefully things are relatively relatable. So we're gonna get started, but as always, real fast, before we begin, maybe consider smashing the like button. Of course, it's always greatly appreciated. Consider subscribing and hitting the bell. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, personal thoughts about, honestly, just really anything, maybe about the war or about stimulus and what you guys think. So with that being said, let's get this video started. So we're going to start by talking a little bit about the Russia-Ukraine war. So the story to what's happening right now is that obviously as we are speaking, if you're watching this, anything while this video is being created or anything in the very near future, they are still very much fighting. In fact, it is very anticipated that throughout this week, if you are watching this on release date, we will probably start to see a lot more information about how the battle unfolds. At this current time, whether this is good or not so good news probably depends on which side you are on, but we'll try to speak as objectively as we can, is that the story right now is that Ukraine, they are significantly outnumbered. There is no doubt about it that Russia has a significantly larger sized military to be able to come in. However, the good news, actually interesting, well, I did say good and bad news, but just the general news is that at this current time, however, Ukraine is actually holding relatively strong. They are definitely, of course, being impacted, but I think the big idea is that originally it was believed that Russia was going to be able to essentially come in and sweep up the entire place as if it was going to be a regular, everyday, easy invasion. But the news that's going on right now is that it turns out is that yes, Russia is definitely dominating, many parts of Ukraine. However, Ukraine is actually holding a lot of resistance. So the big idea is that we don't know how this war is going to unfold, but regardless of who wins, the point is that it's not going to be an easy sweep. And what it also means is that both sides are likely going to receive some kind of damage. It means that regardless of who actually wins, both sides will have to undergo some level of cost to do what they're trying to essentially do. Now, at this current time, I believe that Russia has officially surrounded Kyiv. We don't know the story in terms of how the city is going to go, because many people do believe, and it's very possible that right now as we're speaking, many parts are going to potentially now start to go down under or get destroyed. Many parts of the city have already actually had to experience that, but we don't know what's going to happen just as a nation, even beyond just the capital itself, because that's where the fighting is really starting to spread right now at this time. But of course, that's the most that we really know about just the war side of things. Now, in terms of maybe talking about how this actually relates now to the important part, which is what most of this channel is built up on, which is essentially all about the stimulus checks. So the good and not so good news, or as we just mentioned, is we're just going to make it the general news that's going on, is that originally before they made the war just the serious issue that it currently is, because it was always serious. It's, it's something that's been going on for years and years. But until they recently actually started to come inside and invade, originally Biden and then a lot of people in Congress were going to work to be able to put down stimulus programs. The good news is that they still are going to be doing this. However, the just general, maybe not so good news is that because of everything that's going on in the world right now, when it comes to dealing with war, foreign affairs, their military and everything around that world, what it does mean is that everything related to stimulus programs at this current time is probably going to take a little bit of a back seat. that is the one not so good news. Now, it doesn't mean that we cannot see stimulus programs, but what it does mean is that it just won't be the priority, and that the actual priority will be about sorting out everything related to the conflict that's now happening that we just mentioned and talked about. Now, one of the big topics of discussions that many people believe that this war that's going on might potentially impact, not just now in Russia and Ukraine, and about, I guess this is the part about why this is actually significant to us, among many, many reasons, is probably going to have to deal with the inflation. Because the story right now is that, and this kind of adds on to maybe the last video that we really talked about. If you're interested, definitely check it out, where we really just talk about the Russian and the Ukraine war, and about everything and explaining why it's currently happening and the motivation that is not being talked about on the news. So definitely, check that out if you guys are interested. But the big idea is that what they're really trying to come to just express is the fact that by having this war going on, what it does mean is that a lot of the resources that we use, that are especially resources that are very big in the country that it's currently happening. So in this case, we're talking about resources in like Ukraine and Russia. A lot of things such as like oil, gas, other kinds of resources. What they believe is that because of the war that's going on right now, the just general news to take in is that many people fear that inflation is going to accelerate even greater than it already has. And it makes a lot of sense, because if you think a little bit about like just general economics, is that if you have the same number of people that demand a certain something, but then now supplies become scarce, it means that there are more people competing for less resources. So then what happens is that the price of the resource starts to go up, and then everything gets expensive because there is not as many of them. And then that's when things just really start to trouble down. And I think that's the big thing. So where this actually really extends is because right now at this current time, as most people know, the US is actually going through a lot of inflation, and every single month we get something which is called the Consumer's Price Index, which basically just shows the average price of everything and about how much they've risen. The last one that came out pretty much around like the middle to first half of February, they pretty much already expressed that this was the highest rate of inflation that they've really ever had to experience in probably decades and decades. And having this war now happen is not necessarily going to make it even better. So now the significance about how this really ties into just for stimulus checks is because one of the reasons why many people in Congress were very hesitant about stimulus checks is really because of the fact that they feared that if they tried to add stimulus checks, it's going to put even more money in the economy, which might sound like a good thing in an indirect way, and actually really it is a good and a not so good thing depending on the demographic that you currently fall in. Because the story is that if they start to give out a lot of money, and this is something that Joe Manchin actually expressed, they were very afraid that by giving a lot of people money, it means that they will spend more money, which is good, but it also means that they're going to raise the prices even more, which means that the value of the dollar won't be as high as it actually used to be. So why this matters to us is because imagine if, let's say, and this isn't even about stimulus, this is actually just even about lifestyle in general. Back then, someone could have given us $100 bill, and we could have used that to maybe eat for basically about 2 weeks. A typical meal maybe about $5 to $10. Maybe, other things that we can use to enjoy may typically cost $10. But now, food may have gone up from 5 to 10 and 10 to 15 and then 15 to $20. But the bottom line is that it means that the dollar, or the value of what we can get for the money that we have, is going to go up. So what they're very afraid of, and what the goal and that they're really trying to accomplish right now, is that if they were to do more stimulus programs, what they really have to be on guard about is it's not that they cannot do stimulus programs, but it's that they have to be even more particular and more picky about the actual programs that they do, and also about who actually receives this program. In other words, trying to make stimulus programs go out to people that actually genuinely need it, instead of trying to create some kind of federal program where almost every single person gets it as long as they just literally have one requirement, which is the income cap. they're going to need to make it a lot more focused and specific. And they're already starting to do it like that in a lot of ways. And this is actually going to extend even more, because the thing is it's also anticipated that even though right now this is a Russia and Ukraine situation, if Russia really does end up expanding to the other countries, and if other countries, especially most prominently NATO, starts to maybe come inside to get involved, especially around the Ukraine thing, even though this is a war currently between two countries, it is very probable that it can expand to even more countries, which means that everything that we just talked about, like the inflation, the situation, the value of the dollar, and everything like that, it's potentially going to be even more to an even greater level than everything we already talked about. Of course, thankfully, right now, it's big. It's still very, very big, but it's not like a global, like an absolute global kind of situation. Of course, till then, we really just have to see what happens. So with that being said, that's pretty much what I really just wanted to share in today's update. So if you guys hopefully found that insightful, maybe consider smashing the like button, consider subscribing, hitting the bell, and hitting the bell for similar videos. As always, of course, you guys can decide, but it is greatly appreciated. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, personal thoughts about, honestly, just anything. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, stay safe, stay well, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.